Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod Friends. And this week's episode is shrouded in mystery because it features a conversation unlike the others to date with all podcasters. This week's conversation is with someone who likes to put things out of context. But why? This features my conversation with RHAP out of context, the Carmen Sandiego, the serial of the RHAP community. Mystery, intrigue, shock. Who knows what to expect? Well, I do, because I did an interview with the person, one of the two people behind RHAP out of context, and you're about to hear it in this episode of Pod Friends as we dive in and find out how, why, but most importantly, who? I'm Matt Scott. I'm your host. I appreciate you all for listening. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that we could dive into yet another story that hasn't been heard yet. Last week's episode featuring the one and only Brooklyn Zed was phenomenal, and something that the feedback really was more phenomenal to hear from you, what you had to say, what you thought, how you were changing pronouns in your bios and signatures and otherwise was so powerful. And I'm just thankful for the chance to be able to ask questions that you could all tune into. You could tune into the answers, be part of the conversation, pull up a chair. That's what this is all about. That's what the Pod Friends journey is. And so I love to hear from you, love for you to tune in, and I'm excited for you to hear this podcast with RHAP out of context. But first, I know my own Julie Chen, I think Celebrity Big Brother's definitely rubbing off on me a little bit. But first, some plugs. You could tweet me and Podfriends at Hey Podfriends. Email me podfriends at robhasawebsite.com. You could submit your own nominations and suggestions for future guests of this Podfriends journey. If you go to bit.ly/podfriendsnom, that's bit.ly/podfriendsnom. And the most exciting thing I have to share today is that we officially have a Podfriends podcast feed. And so you could search for Podfriends wherever you listen to podcasts. And please, 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 number one, subscribe. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode of podcasts of Podfriends in this first season, but even beyond the first season. And also, I know you've been sharing your feedback by email, on social media. Leave a review of Pod Friends and let me know what you think, because I might just share it as part of this podcast. One thing I want to mention as we get ready to dive in also is that it's the start of the month. It's a great time to become an RHAP patron to get all of your different patron benefits, exclusive podcasts, games, other community events. You interact and talk with people like Rob Sesternino, the one and only Rob Sesternino from Survivor, from RHAP. You know him, you love to listen to what he's doing. He is the Rob of Rob Has a Podcast. So become a patron. Go to robhasawebsite.com/Patreon or go to patreon.com/RHAP and become part of this patron community. Our guest today is a patron and talks about his fandom with RHAP. And so if this resonates with you, but if you're not a patron, maybe it's the time to become one. Without further ado, why don't I dive in? Why don't I dive in and introduce our guest this week? Making their way to the ring, hailing from parts unknown, aka Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is an epilepsy advocate who was told he needed brain surgery to survive. He's an RHAP superfan, an insurance adjuster, a reality TV podcaster, and a big fan and rabid attendee of Bryce and Wen Presents. Please welcome one half of RHAP out of context, Josh Green. It's okay to just talk to me. Like, you could turn on your camera. It's I don't know what to say, RHAP out of context, but look, I know that you've been anonymous. I know that it's been a while, and I know that it's kind of this big secret, but we're in the middle of a podcast, and what do I have to say to get you to come on? Alakazam, I don't have anything to bribe you with. Like, I'm just letting you know it's a safe space to share who you are, to reveal yourself, to let the people know who you are. Come on, it's just like uh, uh, oh, this is rough. I don't know if this episode's gonna happen. Ah, look at are you are are you? Hold on, people. Are you RHAP out of context?
Think I am the RHAP out of context account, and to
Is-
be, I am not good at keeping a secret, so that is definitely part of why we are sitting down and talking today.
Well, if I recognize that face, that one and only face, one of the great Joshes, of which there are few Joshes. The Joshes need to stick together. Josh Green.
That would be me. Yes,
And you're Josh Green,
I am. Yeah,
but
I can.
you're RHAP out of context.
Yes, I can. I
But you're
can.
Josh Green.
I'm Josh Green. I'm behind the RHAP out of context. Um,
What? Oh my! What is going on? Ah!
you know, many have guessed that it was a variety of different people.
I mean,
Um,
Chappelle. I thought it was Taryn,
People
Melissa
thought
Denny,
Taryn
Rob.
was on Big Brother. The next best fit, the RHAP out of context. Chappelle podcasts all these podcasts.
It
It's not
couldn't have
that
been
hard
him.
for him to tweet it.
Oh, it could have been him.
Could have been for sure. But it's not. It is me. For better or for worse.
Okay,
Uh,
well, this is a shocking turn of events, but I'm glad you turned your camera on, and I'm glad that we could have this conversation because you have some splaining to do.
oh, I guess in a formal way, I work in insurance to pay the bills. Um, I am a twin. I have a lovely twin
That's
sister. We are 2 minutes apart. Um, yeah, and then the other important things, just being a good friend, living in the lovely city of Philadelphia that many great RHAP people are from, RHAP patrons, podcasters, the whole 9 yards. But yeah, pretty simple, and venture up to New York sometimes for any RHAP events up there. So if you were at the 41 watch party at Jordan Kalish's fantasy camp, hello, I am one of two behind the RHAP out of context.
okay. Josh, we talk about pro wrestling. Let me just put the kayfabe away. I knew it was you. I knew it was going to be you. I'm sorry, people, for working you all, as they say in pro wrestling terms. But the one, the only Josh Green. Uh, I had the pleasure of finding out that you were one of the people behind RHAP out of context in one of the most unique ways. Just imagine me living my own life, living my truth, doing the Matt Scott things that I don't know what that even means. It's really awkward. Um, and I was at Bryson Wen Presents, actually going way back to October, when all of a sudden I see a picture from RHAP out of context on Twitter from Bryson Wen Presents in the bar that I was standing in. Believe it or not, do you know the story?
I do. This story is by virtue of the other person who is behind the RHAP out of context, which is another great patron, Justin Fetich. Justin's a great friend of mine, and Justin was the one who took that picture back in October. He was in DC. I was not able to make it to DC, one of the few Bryson One events that
Yeah.
I've not been to.
See, I just figured you were like one of those Among Us shapeshifters, just right? Like, so I thought you could just take on different identities. I didn't know what was going on. But the moment that that picture was posted on Twitter, a manhunt started, and me and the other RHAP podcasters in attendance were looking for RHAP out of context. We did not find RHAP out of context, but that journey led me to Philadelphia, to Bryson Wen Presents, where you walked up to me and introduced yourself. And now we're here.
If
Hmm?
there is a Bryson One present in the state of Pennsylvania, I'm not missing it. I will be there because I love Bryson Wendell. I think they're phenomenal, phenomenal people. Who doesn't? But we talked, and you know, I loved that you were open to meeting, and here we are.
Well, Josh, I we have a lot to dive into. Clearly, there's a lot. Again, lots of splaining, but I actually have some something right here, some receipts, if you could believe
Uh
it. And you
oh,
know, I don't know. This may or may not be some quotes from RHAP out of context. Let's actually, Josh, you want to hear me out on this one?
I got 2 ears and one mouth for a reason. I listen more than I
Love
talk.
it. That's the spirit. So let's play a game, and it's gonna be who said the quote from RHAP out of context. Let me read this first quote for you. Uh, I'm not putting my hands in anybody's mouth.
Jacob Jones.
The that's the buzzer. I'm this is low rent. I don't actually have a buzzer. Her appendix is still intact.
Oh crap. TikTok Nicole.
Brr. I
Man,
could picture you in a dinosaur costume.
that's something, Big Brother. Mari.
Mm, okay. I'm good. I just enjoyed my Greek salad. I didn't even use a fork.
Matt Scott.
Okay. Ding, 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 ding. How about this? Out of context, please don't make it seem like Matt is having a baby. Do you know who said that?
I got this game now. That would be Matt Scott.
Okay, well, that's actually Mari. That's Mari Fourth on that one. There are other quotes, other things here. Another one I have for you, not from RHAP out of context, but maybe from RHAP out of context.
Oh.
I'm glad my stupidity was memorable.
Oh. Oh God. I don't want. I
Let me
don't.
give you one more. If I blow it, I'm going to be so angry. That's a good one out of context.
Oh man.
Look, Josh, this is an
Oh my.
intervention. This is an intervention. Clearly, I'm not salty. You know, I've been out of context. You've been out of
Oh.
context. We're in context. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's coming back to you now. It's coming back to you. Yeah.
Oh. Oh. So those were my tweets.
A few of them were, yeah. Yeah, especially I'm glad my stupidity was memorable. September 9th. There's one from
Mhm.
June 4th, 2015. It's all a whole thing. It's on the tweets. Anyway, Josh, really glad to be here with you. My first question, why?
Oh, why? Why is a phenomenal question.
I will say RHP out of context for me as a podcaster is like one of the most interesting things. I've had conversations with others about it. I've seen it pop up in my day-to-day life, typically with some like interesting quotes, but I think that one of the biggest mysteries, and this goes back to the DC Bryson Wen event, is that we want to know who it is who's posting quotes from our podcast, and even more, who is listening to enough podcasts in order to post quotes from them. What is going on? Why? How? Tell me more. I'm going to sit back and listen. I have 2 ears and one mouth, Josh. I'm just like you.
So I can say for Justin and I, we started the RHAP Out of Context in April of 2021. Um, like the rest of the world, not a great time in many families in the world, in job markets, everything like that. Um, and Justin and I talk a lot, about podcasting stuff, just day to day life stuff. He's become a very good friend to me since the Philly Know It Alls back during Survivor: The Edge of Extinction, and he is much more creative than I am. And he came up with the idea. I thought it was amazing. And once he pitched it, I started listening to a few more podcasts and I realized, oh my God, like this is going to be amazing if we just do it right. Once we started doing that out of context, like not only the podcasters, but like patrons were enjoying it too. And then it gets brought up on podcasts every week. And we were like, it's us two. They're talking about us. Like it was just it was awesome. So we kept doing it, but we figured why not let everyone know who it is and we can still do what we enjoy doing.
Yeah, and before diving into like the genuine conversation, I'll set aside I had to, of course I had to start with a little bit of ribbing you. You've definitely caused a lot of people to probably lose sleepless nights wondering who RHAP Out of Context is. But I'll say, in like completely genuinely, that I'll speak for myself as a podcaster. It is so often that we are doing these shows and we think to ourselves, who's even listening to this? Like, even when you're 2 hours into the podcast, sometimes with the wrestling wrap up, 3 hours into the podcast, you're like, no one's listening to this. And not even from the perspective of you don't want people to listen. Like, it's the sad thought of like, no one who's even listening to us, who even cares? And it is nice to see that people are listening and paying attention and care about the words that we say, because like there's kind of a it's kind of coming from a from a that important it's coming from a place of love. And I've definitely seen that, and I just want you to know that I am grateful for you and like Justin and the ways that you actually serve as free promotion for all of us. So thank you so much for all that, Josh.
Well, I really appreciate that, Matt. And um, I I have my own podcast, so I know what that's like. Where you're putting in effort in the pre-show, you're recording, and you don't know if it's being appreciated. Um, and I just realized that people were really um having fun with it. We really at first it was like, oh, we can have like funny quotes and like most of the time we rib on Chappelle. So like
Mm.
when- whenever whenever I hang out with Chappelle in person, I definitely owe him one. But uh, you know, we we then realized like this can be great for people who can't listen to every podcast. Like we can try to add some highlights throughout the week that people won't be able to, get to. And because they have lives, unlike me. And we'll be able to provide that for them. And I haven't seen too many complaints. We're not perfect. We're definitely, we still learn all the time. Uh, certain things are too far, but I think we border that line well of like being funny and trying to provide that during a really rough time and not going too far to hurt any podcasters' feelings because we never want to do that. We know you guys have hard jobs. You already have really annoying people sitting at home who have nothing to do better with their lives than to subtweet or at you or comment on YouTube. So we're not trying to be like those. We're just trying to add a playful but nice discourse around all the podcasts.
Yeah, and I think that, just to kind of reflect on something that you said before, diving less into out of context and more into your story in a second, is that, you know, like most people are phenomenal. And like one thing that I'll admit is like I well, not admit, but one thing I'll share is that I love to like some of my favorite podcasts that I've done have been the ones with patrons and like the Q&As that's included you and a number of other people. It's because like the patron community and the people who are RHAP diehards and fans are like amazing. And like so many of those people, I'll say, as someone who became a podcaster and got really involved in the community during the pandemic, like a lot of those people are actually friends now of mine and of one another, and we have this great community. But you know, the more that you're out there, the more negativity you might get, or subtweets. Like if you search your name, you're like, oh man, why did I search my name on, you know, that thing? And it's, you know, it's the type of thing where we get so much flack sometimes. And again, 99% of it I'm sure is positive, but you know, at times there are those negatives, and it's nice to just have someone who's like tweeting what we're saying rather than something that's not that. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank you for that. But even more, because I think we'll get more into like some of what you're saying around the challenges and like maybe things that have gone too far, and more about the account. But Josh, you are first and foremost, at least as far as I know, a fan. You're a patron, and there are lots of patrons who I'm sure are listening and tuning in. The thing that I think is really powerful is each patron and person or community has their own story. That's what Podfriends is about. It's like featuring those stories. So like you gave us a little bit of who you are and like the bio, almost like the Twitter bio with you being an insurance adjuster, but like how did you get involved in this community and why? Like when did that start?
Yeah, so I've definitely been like on and off. Definitely like much more on in the reality TV world. I got back into it late February, early March of 2017. And for a lot of patrons, because for the majority of my time in the patron community, we've been in this pandemic, so I haven't been able to meet as many people as I would like. I have epilepsy. I've had it for the past decade or so, and for me, my getting back into reality TV was related to that. I saw a commercial with with Sandra and Sari and Andrea, and I said, "Oh my God, Survivor's back on! This is going to be great." If only I had known the boot order, I may have skipped 34. But um, I,
Many people would agree.
I just got so excited that Survivor was back, and I had been in the hospital. I just got, as soon as I got home, I was just binging Survivor season after season after season. Was already all in for all the future seasons, and I've loved it. And then I was in college and at undergrad at Temple University, and uh, I had heard about a event happening downtown um, for the Edge of Extinction. It was during the Edge of Extinction. It was just a watch party, and I had been watching the season, so I decided to go. And that was the first RHAP event I ever went to. Justin was a complete stranger to me, but was standing next to me in line
Hmm.
at the live know it alls. Um, we both were alone and said, "Hey, you want to hang out and watch the episode together?" And that's where our friendship has originated from. I know Justin has had a lot deeper and longer stretch with reality TV. Mine's been on and off, but just the people that I met at that first know it alls, it's exactly like you said, Matt. I was like, everyone was so polite, everyone was so nice. Not a single bad interaction the entire time I was there. And I was all in after that. I wanted all the coverage I could get. And I was just shocked. Like going on robiswebsite.com for the first time, I was like, this is amazing. Like,
Hmm.
I was a fan of Big Brother, and I still am a little bit. And I had so much content there. 22 or not 22, 23 was better, but 22 pissed me off for many reasons. But um, just seeing all the content on Rob's page, like he just puts so much into his craft. So it was a lot. So a long-winded answer. It was that first Philly event, but definitely happy that I had found it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that something that's interesting, and I think about my own experience. It's funny because I actually discovered RHAP around the almost the exact same time that you did, March 2017, which I like vividly remember. And I don't think I haven't shared this story before, but like for me, I discovered Rob has a podcast like right when my dad passed away, and it I like for anyone who's experienced a loss, it's such a difficult thing to kind of navigate and to deal with. And I think something that I've even heard Rob talk about is just the power of like having a podcast and having people in your ear who kind of become, like, as Bryce says, friends in your head, right? And that was so powerful for me. But like the thing that really engaged me, as you can imagine, with RHAP eventually was becoming a podcaster and applying and doing all that stuff. Like, what was the thing that really like hooked you to RHAP? Because I think about all the people who show up to those events. I think of some of the people who I know are kind of nervous or alone. I remember I was at the DC event for Bryson One Presents a few months back, and like I remember meeting or seeing someone who was just alone, and she didn't look like she was having a good time, and other patrons and people like went up to her to ask how she was doing. This is just me as the observer. And so like there's this powerful community that we have, but like it could be really intimidating. So like how did you actually find yourself getting hooked to it?
In my opinion, and when I say all of you, it's the phenomenal network of podcasters that Rob has built around him. In my opinion, you're all at your best when you're talking about topics that are way more important than reality TV. Um, and that's why I've been hooked to RHAP for so long. Or
Mm.
it hasn't even been so long, but I feel that I've been able to learn more, be able to think in ways that I've never challenged myself to, and become a better person because of the people that I listen to every day. Whether it's all of those roundtables that you hosted about Black podcasters and media, whether it's been any of the Purple Pants podcast episodes that I've never missed, any Rob podcast, mainly the one at the merge of Island of the Idols, there's never a shortage of coverage, even in the most difficult of times.
In short, because I imagine this could be a long answer. Like, what were the seeds of your reality TV fandom? Like, how far does it go back? What was like the first show? Who were some of your favorite characters and people that you loved? I'm so curious because like as a reality fan, it's always cool to meet other reality fans, which like thankfully I have that benefit. But yeah, like what's your story with reality TV? Your reality TV origin story, if you will, to make it really epic sounding.
Ethan Zahn was like the person I
Mm.
looked up to. He was, um, the in my world, he's an NJB, a nice Jewish boy. He's what I wanted to be growing up. He played soccer. I played soccer a long time growing up. He's still that nice Jewish boy. Like he is the person that I, just was like, this guy is the coolest. So I definitely have been with Survivor the longest. I got into Big Brother over time, have watched some seasons back. I'll definitely stick with it as long as whoever was behind casting 23 is still going to be casting. Been getting into The Amazing Race, which has been a lot of fun to watch. And like I said, the challenge with you has been just a really pleasant surprise. My friends told me to watch it, and I've absolutely loved it. Binging as many seasons as I can. It's been great.
Who are your favorites?
I am
The
so.
only the only right answer is Ayana. So
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you meant like overall or challenge.
oh no, well, challenge specific. I think
Yeah.
it's always cool. I love because Ethan is someone who I think is just an amazing character. I love what you were saying. Beyond who he is as a character, he's an amazing person. More importantly,
Mhm.
but the thing I think is interesting about Ethan. There's so much that's interesting about Ethan, but one of the things I think is interesting is that, I actually like back in 2017, when I started interviewing people, I started interviewing change makers, and one of them was Ian Rosenberger. And we did not talk at all about like Survivor, about Plow. It was about his nonprofit work. And the one place that kind of we went into Survivor was when he credited Ethan for being his inspiration for doing the nonprofit work that he's doing primarily in Haiti and making the impact that he's making. Another like really impactful, amazing person. But yeah, like who are some of those other people who stand out to you? Maybe not even as amazing characters, but just as like people who resonate with you.
I I always like to see who people are to their community, to the people that they're playing for at home. Um, I've resonated with people who can be able to fight for the everything going on at home. So Adam immediately connected with me. I've met Adam as well. Whenever Rob mentions him and says he's the nicest person, like it's absolutely true. Um,
Adam Klein.
yes, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And
He's incredible.
any person who can try to make light in a dark day. So I immediately think of Tyson, and I won't even turn on his 4 or 5 seasons of Survivor. For me, I will just turn on a random episode of News AF, because he is so witty, so funny. And then, like you said, I mean, um, Ayana over on the challenge is absolutely amazing. We talked about this earlier in the week. The fact that she hasn't been on reality TV in the last 2 decades is insane. Um, she's gold, absolute gold. And I Tech Holmes is just a treasure to the TV world. He's also amazing and hilarious. I love being able to hear from people that I may not get to hear from in my everyday life. I admittedly um, am in a suburb of Philadelphia. I don't get to interact with a ton of people that end up on reality television,
Mhm.
and it's very refreshing to see different stories be told in a refreshing way.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that's one of the things that's really interesting to me about hearing that from you is that like I think of the different people, the different I even hate to call them characters, but like they're characters on the show, but they're people who resonate with me. I think typically are like people who somehow I could see myself in some one way or the
Yeah.
other. So you like reference Black Voices of RHAP, and I think that's a great example of like just how important representation is. And I love what you're saying about people who are fighting for things because that also is something that I think is like relevant to my life, and it's really inspired me. But like you mentioned epilepsy earlier, and I actually wanted to ask about that because I am someone probably not alone, definitely not alone in this, like not even fully understanding what epilepsy is, how it affects your life, what that looks like. I also know that you've like done work in terms of being like caring about that, being an advocate in a sense for that. But could you just talk more about that side of things, and like that issue, how it affects your life, and how epilepsy kind of is part of your story.
So I certainly can. And just one other thing I wanted to
Yeah.
touch on. I I never I just am always, when I see, even when it's alumni that aren't on the show anymore, when they're um you know advocating for a cause, whether it's Bryson Wendell, whether it's Lauren Ashley Beck, whoever it may be, for whatever cause, um I I can always sympathize with that. I'm never going to know what it's like, but with everything with my epilepsy, I beat to that drum all the time and I'm never going to stop. And it's the same whenever I see all of the stuff that anyone at RHAP or any of the reality TV alumni are fighting for. That's what I can really sympathize and enjoy in a character. Um, as far as what I have went through and am still going through, knock on wood, hopefully that the worst is behind me. But my junior year of high school, I was sitting in my living room, just was with my family, opened my eyes in the hospital. I did not know what was going on. Um, I was a kid that was probably, I mean, many years ago, and two and a half, or no, almost 2 years of quarantine later, about 80 to 100 pounds heavier. But at that point, we had no clue what was going on. I was continuing to have seizures throughout high school, into college. There was a stretch in college that I couldn't go a month without being in the hospital. And I just did not think that there would be able to be so many accomplishments that I would have now. Like, I have a full-time job, I'm able to drive. In many states, you have to go 6 to 8 months without a seizure until you can drive. I
Wow.
didn't think those things would ever happen in my life. And in June of this year, again, knock on wood that everything goes right, I'll be hitting 5 years seizure free. So it's been something that's been really hard to deal with. But as I've been going through the journey with it, I've had to realize that there's so many people that have had it so much worse that I have to do what I can to help them. And if I don't, I'm letting down a gigantic group of people that I would never be able to forgive myself for.
Again, I think that this is a really important conversation, even just for me sitting here, because I'm learning not only more about you, but more about, by extension, like other people who experience what you experience with epilepsy. Like, is there anything you wish that that people like me who don't know about it like knew, or any ways that we could kind of be like better advocates and better friends, truly, to folks who do experience epilepsy?
That question that you just asked just makes you a better advocate and a better friend. There's a lot of times where it's, "Oh, if you need anything, just let me know."
Right. Right.
Where I'd much rather, you know, from, the people that are close to you in your inner circle, I'd rather just have them say, "Hey, what do you need? What can I do to help you?" Instead of leaving that open door type of thing. Um, so even just asking, and also just knowing, like, and I can't even put it into words just because it I would be lying if I said, "Oh, it hasn't been a big deal." Um, but it is, like, having a loved one, a sibling, a like even extended family of someone who goes through a neurological disability or any disability, it is rough on them. It is really, really difficult. And I think it's something that's not always always understood. So I would say that's the biggest thing. I mean, for me, I just always, whether it's for better or for worse, I look at things in my life and I brush things off because I have been through hell and back already. Like it, it's not going to
Mm,
end my day. It will end my day if I upset somebody, right?
yeah.
But if someone says something to me, it's not going to end my day. Like I've already been told that I needed brain surgery to stay alive. Like you're not gonna push me over. I promise you that. Random person on Twitter who doesn't like my take about the 17th episode of the Challenge 37. I promise you. I promise you. I've been through way too much to have your comment. So in that aspect, if you understand what I'm getting
Yeah.
at there, it certainly helped. And I it's also just been able to very easily see who your true friends are.
As I think of like the conversation that we're having right now, I I think of like all of the people in our community who each have their own story. And maybe it's not something that feels like it is like notable or a cause, or maybe it's not even something that's like particularly like unfortunate in their lives. But like um it actually a lot of this conversation I've had this on my mind, and it's because of when we're recording, and it's so recent. But like recently, unfortunately, the patron community lost Sean Tucker, who was part of the community and who was like a wrestling rehab up listener and active in our Facebook group, and also just so much meant so much to the RHAP community. And like I didn't know him particularly well in the real time. Like we interacted, but the thing is, as podcasters, like I'm sure you even understand in your own podcasting journey, but also as you understand as a patron, like we meet so many people. Thinking of patron Q&As and all the people who kind of come through, and the thing that resonated with me there was just how meaningful it is the role that each of us kind of plays in this community. And it is a community, and we each kind of bring ourselves to it, but in the process we affect a lot of lives around us. And I just want to say that like I'm glad that you're part of this community. Congratulations on nearly 5 years without having to deal with epilepsy in the same way, without an epileptic seizure, I believe is the way I would phrase that. And I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad we're having this conversation. And I know a lot of people could see themselves in you, because something that I've heard a lot of from community members is just how like beyond the pandemic alone, which has been rough for people on their physical health for obvious reasons, for mental health and otherwise, um, there's a lot of people have been going through it, and similar to me and similar to you, have found some kind of like solace in the community that we've created. But speaking of creating things, I want to actually ask about like that time when you and Justin created and launched and started working on Out of Context. Like, where were you in your life at that point? Like,
Yeah, I know for Justin, he works in sales, but his passion is writing. He does. He actually interviewed Rob out in LA during the 10-year anniversary party,
oh wow,
and the Winners of War premiere. So for Justin, like a lot of his things are published and like known, and not really like just people know that he's writing it because it says by Justin Fetich.
right, exactly.
So when we were running the Out of Context account in the beginning, when we had no clue how it was going to go, we were just like, are people gonna hate us? Like, are you know are we gonna get crazy replies like, please stop doing this?
Could you talk more about, not to interrupt you, but could you talk more about like where that comes from? That inclination of like, what will people be mad that we're tweeting their quotes, which, like, I will say, I've said many wild things on the Wrestling Wrap Up, and including, we love a good slip and slide. That's another line I have on this piece of paper right here.
Yeah. So our inclination was just like being the in the time that it was, and it still is, for everyone out there. We wanted to just provide some levity and have some laughs. We did not want this to be something like, oh, so and so said something stupid, like let's cut them down and make them feel horrible. Like that's never what we've wanted to do. That's never been in our intentions at all. Where we're at with it now, we love it. Like we have some ideas, for future things just to spice it up a little bit, but we definitely like want to still keep doing it. We just I am like historically god awful at surprises. So like I have been convinced a number of times that there were two people who have caught me along the way, and one person I was convinced at an event just saw me tweeting out a quote while I was at an event. Not my brightest moment, but still.
Mm.
Um, I I just was convinced I was gonna let it go and tweet it from my personal account, maybe. But we've just been having a lot of fun with it. We really have, and definitely not over. At least on for Justin and I, we enjoy it.
Yeah, one thing that's been really interesting that I've appreciated has been just the like, again, the fact that people are listening and sharing and kind of like promoting and getting other people to listen and share and care and realize that, like, we're podcasting each and every week about wrestling or about Big Brother or about Survivor, and again, people are listening. But I kind of I wonder more. Have there been any like cool moments or any like cool fun stories?
One that definitely sticks out to me, Justin does not watch Big Brother, but the night that, the cookout made the final 6,
Yeah.
I really I thought it was a turning point for reality TV and the franchise as a whole, so tweeting that was to us, it was necessary. I think it was reached well. For one thing with Justin and I, that is another reason why we wanted to talk about this. We're two white heterosexual males. We try to make sure we have it right. The we don't have the broadest perspective on everything.
Mhm.
We'd like to think for the very serious things that we do a good job on our account. There are some things where it may be a little too funny, if you will, and we shouldn't have tweeted it. But we always want to bring, if there's something that is important enough, we definitely want to tweet that out. So obviously, like those roundtables you hosted, those and that would be every time that would be an answer because that night was just so historic and felt that it was so
Mm.
perfect to bring up during that night.
Hmm. I guess I'll just acknowledge this, that, like, this episode, this conversation isn't for everyone, right? And I know that there are a lot of people who won't tune into this conversation because they're like, oh, I don't know or care what RHAP out of context is. Oh, it's Josh Green. I don't follow him or listen to him or whatever. But like, that's kind of where those are the conversations I love, like the hidden gems and the stories that you don't always hear. And for anyone who's like hearing my voice right now, I just want to send like a lot of love to you, because it's like, this is how we should treat people in our community. We should like listen to them and value them and like hear where they're coming from and also like learn from them. As Bryce says, and you have you referenced Bryce a couple times, so maybe that's why it's top of mind, but we go together.
Justin and I are huge fans of his. We've been to a bunch of his, Bryce One Presents, a bunch of his charity events. But when he's retweeting our tweets from the Purple Pants podcast, it's been great. Like we really have fun with it. But we'll always text each other back and forth, even if it's like a random episode. There's definitely some shows that are gold mines every week. Um, Shout out
Yeah.
to the B&B because it's hard to go not even 2 minutes without a out of context quote for those two wonderful people over there.
Yes, and the wrestling rehab up. Before you go off listing all the other podcasts with the gold mines, I will shout out the wrestling rehab up, hosted by Mari Fourth. There's some I don't know, some other guy there. I don't know, but yeah,
What's
I
that
like
other guy's name? No,
I don't know.
you guys.
I don't know him. Never met him. Never listened. Don't at me. I don't know who he is. But it, like, in all seriousness, I think that like what you're saying is powerful, and I'm sure there are lots of examples of like all of these different moments, people, podcasters, things that stand out. But one last question I have for you, Josh. Not even throw out of context out.
All the questions,
There's
man. All
other things that need to do. But like one question is just like about you and your story. One question I love to ask is like if your life, keeping in mind everything that we've talked about today, if your life were a book or documentary, what would the title be, and why?
wow. Um, you got me there. Hmm.
Well, let's talk through it. Let's talk through it. What are some of the elements that jump out that kind of like define you and your story? And is being part of this community one of them, or is it just like kind of a side a side piece to all of it?
That will be most likely featured on the
No, no,
Patreon.
no, no! I need to get out of here.
I will answer. RHAP is not a side piece.
Hmm.
I I really,
That's
you know what? Damn it! I fell into my own trap. Matt.
putting it on out of context. Hey,
Might
hey,
be my.
Justin,
I think it might
Justin.
be my first time being on
Hey,
there. So
put it there. Put it there. I doubt that it'll end up on there, but mostly because you're doing the account. If I was, it totally would. But
but to answer, the autobiography or documentary question, I think it would probably be The Wild Ride, the Josh Green story.
no,
Uh, It's
I like you had it. I like what you said about the Josh Green story.
yes, yes. I just for me, like I in my life in general, I really don't have much middle ground. It's either high highs or low lows, and that's where the roller coaster comes into play. Um, but it's a roller coaster that has reality TV on it constantly. You name a reality show. That's the other thing too. Like I do watch a lot of the shows that I tweet about from the account. Um, so the roller coaster has reality TV on loop, even when I'm asleep.
Oh my gosh, look at
I may
that.
not be in tune with it, but it's on.
Okay, well, there's a roller coaster and there's the wild ride, and I know that there are definitely some out of context like tweets that I could plug in that would be like great ways to wrap up this show. But I think the best thing I could probably say, Josh, is just like thank you for your time and for this conversation. And just want to say I appreciate you. Thanks for being a listener. Thanks for being passionate. Thanks for promoting the shows and tweeting about things that I say in episodes I'm on even more than I do. And I just want to say I'm grateful.
Well, I do want to say before we get off, first of all, thank you. I was very happy to hear that you were given the opportunity to have your own show on the network. I hope you have it for as long as
Got
possible.
it probably canceled after this episode, but it's all good.
About it.
It's
I genuinely, Justin said this when um, I had originally told him it was you that had messaged us about a potential interview. Um, we both really think the world of you as an interviewer, and we're just shocked. We were like, this is a prank. There's no way he's gonna want to talk to a parody Twitter account that just throws out all of his friends quotes about stuff. Like, no way. So we're just absolutely um, over the moon that you wanted to do it.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's episode of Pod Friends. It was really great diving in with Josh and learning his story. And, if there's one thing, and I talked about this in the podcast, that resonates with me most, it's that each and every community member has a story that matters. And it's something that I think is worth tuning into and giving some time and space to and listening to, because you never really know what to expect. If you are a listener of this podcast, what I want you to know is that your story, yes, you, the person who probably thinks they don't have an interesting story, or the person who probably thinks no one wants to listen, your story matters, you matter, and I hope that hearing Josh's story, that you're able to see yourself as a fan of RHAP, as a patron, as someone who loves and supports this community that has brought us all together. And speaking of this community that's brought us all together, at the start of last week's episode, I talked about some of the wrap-ups, but I just want to give a big plug to everything that Shannon Gus is doing on Survivor Global with Survivor Australia, talking about Shannon Diaz-Twine and her daughter Nina, and just covering Australian Survivor and all Survivors so brilliantly. Shannon is phenomenal. She is a voice of the people when it comes to Survivor, and I would absolutely encourage you to check it out, because any super fan of Survivor, and I know that a lot of you listening are super fans of Survivor, will love to check it out. You'll love to jump in without having to catch up. And if you become a patron of RHAP, you could also get the links, get the hookup to listen to and watch Australian Survivor, more importantly, and tune in. So another reason to become a patron. It's a great time. It's the start of the month, and couldn't encourage it enough. But again, at Hey Pod Friends on social media, podfriends at robhasawebsite.com, bit.ly/podfriendsnom to submit your guest nominations. And until next time, bye, Pod Friends.